This segment is brought to you by Rouse's Markets. Feels like home.
So I want to thank y'all for being here tonight. As you can see, this is a regular deal, and we're working on having town halls once a month in different areas. And as we go through this, you're going to know that every April I'm in Gray, right? Every March I'm in Montague. And so you'll know that we're consistently coming out and having conversations and working to resolve issues and bring resources and everything that we need to do as a parish. So again, I thank you for making some time to be here. I feel like time is our most valuable asset. And I believe that, you know, by you giving some of yours to us, that we can help move our parish forward, and really appreciate it. So we have some people here from the parish, and then we have a council member, Mr. Carl Harding. That's our council chair. Let me stand corrected in saying that. There you go. Give him a round of applause. We have Russell Walters and Ryan Melanson with comms, the guys behind the cameras, behind the computers. We have Earl Hughes, our EOP, our OEP, EOP, EOC director, depending on where you're from. Emergency Operation Preparedness. Candace Molden, our CFO, in the back there. Kelly Bernardo, who's in charge of Housing and Human Services. Mr. David Rome, who's in charge of Public Works. Mark Black, Coastal, CZM. Mr. Leilani Adams, who is our Chief of Staff. And Mr. Noel Ered, who's our Chief Administrative Officer. That used to be the parish manager. And so I'm a business guy. So we had a CFO. We had a CIO. I'm basically the CEO. So I was like, we're having a CAO, because I feel like that's more representative of what they do. So it's just how I like things. Just weird, I know. Anyway, so last time I came around, it was a conversation about recovery, resiliency, and quality of life. And I feel like it was important. And our teams, I was like, what do y'all think about the presentation? And we said, you should call it revitalization instead of quality of life. And I said, done. So that's what we did. And so this is about updates that we have throughout the parish. I always ask this question first, though. We can go through this presentation, or I could just start answering questions. But I like to leave it up to the crowd of what y'all would like to do first. So, show of hands, presentation. Show of hands that want to ask questions first. Show of hands that don't know why you're here and thought it was something free being given away. How long is the meeting? So I'm here till every question is answered, or we can get direction on a question. So even if we go through the presentation, I'm still going to answer every question. I give a very informal presentation. So as I go through each slide, it's going to be a topic. Before I move on to the next slide, I'm going to ask if there's any questions. So you can ask a question at any time. It doesn't have to even be about the topic that's on the slide presentation, but I do want to give an update of what's been going on in Terrebonne Parish in this last year and 4 months. And so, again, real informal. We're going to talk about a bunch of different topics. A lot of times people ask questions. I'm like, oh, we're 2 slides away from that. Just bear with me. So after we're done, any other questions, again, I'm going to stay here till every question is answered. Whatever questions we can't get answered, we have some pieces of paper to collect your name, your phone number, the address of where the issue is. And we're going to take all these papers, turn them into work orders, and make sure that we follow up in each and every one of them. So that's the reason why we're here. Look, I'm here to make sure your voice is heard, right? That's how we're coming out to the regions. Oh, we might have a winner here. Look, sitting in the front. I was joking around that we were giving away stuff to people in the front row, but nobody sat there. Now I'm going to have to go get a bag of chips or something and hook y'all up. But, it's really about giving you information, letting you know what's going on, making sure you feel like you got a voice, and make sure that you know we're working through issues throughout our entire parish. And so that's why we bring some of our team here. And again, whatever questions we can't answer here, we're going to gather and we're going to get back to you. So with that being said, we'll jump right into it. All right. So we always start off with hurricane rebuilding projects, right? So yes, almost 4 years after a storm, we're still dealing with hurricane rebuilding, as many of our residents are, right? It's a conversation of us having to fight with the insurance company. We had to sue our insurance company. FEMA didn't get involved after you figure out what the insurance company is going to pay, which I'm working on trying to get FEMA to change the way that works. Is that, it's a situation where we only had $65 million worth of insurance, and our power plant alone is a $170 million project. And I'll talk about the power plant in a little bit. But as you go through this and know that we sued our insurance company, we're working with FEMA. Of the 200, and I want to say it's about $250 million obligated, we've collected half of that, and we're still waiting on some projects to be obligated, like the power plant, of which they've allocated $65 million of the 170. We're waiting on the other 105. Of course, all that money is reimbursable. There's a match. For the power plant, we got to put up our deductible. So when you look at how that 170 shakes out, we're not getting $170 million from FEMA. We're going to put up our deductible. We got a match we have to do, and then we're going to have FEMA funding. But FEMA's going to say it's got a value of X and help us to try to be made whole with that X. So we had a fire station on the east side that we're anticipated to have the building built by May of 26. Right now, it looks like a little Hershey kiss, but that's what we're having to do. FEMA let us tear it down and build that. The Civic Center, we're actually going through some repairs, and both the temporary roof of it and the power plant was ripped off during Francine. So that delayed the project. So we're still going through some repairs in the Civic Center. Anticipated completion is May of 25. That's actually going to include changing one set of bleachers that's used the most. And so between the roof and some walls and the bleachers, those are projects we're working on. Dumas Auditorium was on here, but we finished that in mid-24. Municipal Auditorium is pretty much done. If you haven't been in Municipal Auditorium lately, that place looks nice. New lights, new ceiling, almost looks like a brand new building. And that's a building that our residents can use and work with, along with the Civic Center and some other facilities. But we still have a few projects still going on. And the Buquet Bridge, which is a 2-year project, it's something that they're basically replacing everything but the frame. And we've waited this much time for us to finally get the money with FEMA and work on getting that project awarded and getting that project complete, which is hopefully mid-2026 around this time, a little bit later, that bridge will be complete. Any questions on this before I move forward? Okay. So going to the next one, which is the power plant. And, you wonder, in this area, why is that power plant important to you? There's 3 main things that are handled through the power plant, and that is the water plant, the hospital, and the airport. A lot of that stuff, some of that stuff affects us all, right? When we look at water, it's important that we do something related to power. We're in a 200 megawatt pocket of energy between Morgan City and New Orleans. Of that, Terrebonne Parish would produce 80 megawatts of that. That plant was lost during Ida. FEMA thought it was so important that we have power in the event that we lose a feeder that they're paying for 20 megawatts of temporary generators till our power plant gets redone. We're still waiting on FEMA to obligate that. We're hoping to hear something real soon about them finally saying they're going to give us the rest of that funding because of the pocket we're in and the things that it supports. And so we're working to build an 80 megawatt power plant because we have to build back to what it was. It's going to be more efficient, so we have the opportunity to sell more energy than we did before, and we have the potential to expand anywhere from another 20 to maybe 60 or 80 megawatts. We have one feeder line that comes in from energy, and if we get cut off with that feeder line to the world, then the power plant we have and the temporary generators we have, again, maintain. We have 14,000 customers. Of those customers, the water plant, the hospital, and the airport. And so you can see what our temporary generators have been called upon to date. So they are being used. It does offset if it's too cold, too hot, loads, these generators get called upon. Without having those, we maybe have some rolling brownouts and blackouts. And so FEMA felt it's important. They're paying for temporary generators. Hopefully we get an answer here pretty soon. We're also going through a system-wide line repair of 847 damages, of which 140-ish were repaired right after Ida. We were going through that repair, and then Francine hit, and that's what I'm going to talk about on the next slide. But we're expected those 847 repairs to be done by June of 25. And I'll just go into this next slide, and I'll answer questions. But we go into the system-wide line repairs, 656 for Ida, 386 for Francine, some of that overlapping. But these are repairs that we've been having to do to the poles, to the lines, to the transformers, everything from damages of both Ida and Francine, which speak to the resiliency of our network and what it relates to the hospital, the water plant, and the power plant, and the airport. Any questions on the power plant and anything with system-wide line repairs? Okay, I'll jump into the next slide. So CDBG-DR funding. So this is hurricane recovery funding coming from HUD to the state through OCD and then to us. $117.6 million. It has to deal with resiliency, economic development, and low to moderate income. They had it separated into different, like phase 1, phase 2, or where one was resiliency, the other one was economic development. They put all that together, and we've been working with the state to get projects approved. So we gave them a plan of about 26, 29 projects. They said these look good, but you need to submit applications on how you think it's going to work and how it's going to flow. Everything here is reimbursable. So we have to spend the money, make sure we follow the rules, and then they give us the money back. So it's not like they're writing checks or just giving us anything. It's stuff that we have to make sure it meets their requirements, that we go through the environmental and compliance and everything else. But to date, these are the projects that have been awarded. The steam engine, an aviation program, a couple pump stations, an Activate the Bayou program, which we have 3 phases of. That's 1. A stormwater plan, a small business incubator, parish weather stations, Main Street complete streets, wastewater master plan, a permanent location for housing human services, wastewater implementation of the wastewater plan for 1 area that was low to moderate income, support the seafood industry phase 2, and water redundancy. So we're still waiting on 11 projects on top of this to get approved and them say, okay, you could proceed, spend the money, and then we'll reimburse it, right? Yes, ma'am.
I just didn't see sewer on there.
Wastewater.
Wastewater, okay.
Wastewater master plan.
All right.
So when you look at, we have 2 plants. We have a north plant, a south plant. And we pay electricity bill? All right. Someone on a light back there? There you go. All right. See what happens with electricity? You never know. It could be the power plant now. So we have 2 plants. And when you look at what it takes to add, especially rural communities, into those plants, it might be so much for a street, so much for a neighborhood on that side. And then I got to do some upgrades to accept the increased amount of sewage at the plant side. That's what that plan's going to give us. You know, if we want to expand sewage to areas that don't have sewage currently, this is what it's going to cost. From there, we out again? Oh, you see the slide, but okay. Messing with me over here. From there, it says, okay, this is what it's going to take to implement sewage in areas that don't have it, which then allows us to go after, like we just got into the Delta Region Authority. They mostly deal with water and sewage grants. So with these plans we're putting together, that plan, the stormwater master plan, it gives us an understanding of what we may be able to do, what funding we might need to get some things implemented as it lays out to priorities in the area or areas that, you know, need it more than another one. So some of this stuff, you know, when you look at, for example, the seafood industry phase 2, we were going to try to give some funds, do a study, give some more funds. They said, we need you to do the study first, right? There's another one that we're waiting on approval of, which is community centers. They're saying you need to do a plan, and we're going, you know, we'll pay for the plan and hopefully be able to pay for a few higher priority community center requirements. So those are the things that we're working with the state to make sure, you know, this is what we're looking to spend the funding on. This is how we're looking to implement that. I really believe, especially like for, I don't know if I got this on here, but we have like a small business grants. I feel like in that situation, the rubbers are going to meet the road of how we provide the opportunity for our residents and business to have access to those grants. When I look at the small business grants, you know, me being a consultant that helps businesses become more profitable, more efficient, more productive, to help them identify a pain and help them invest in that pain is what I would like to see us do with businesses instead of just saying, here's money, good luck, right? Help them understand where they can spend the money and how that works. That's where we feel like we'll better help our residents with these kind of projects and processes. And like the parish weather stations, we've had feedback from residents in the past that they had to prove that we had a certain amount of sustained winds for a certain period of time, but we don't have anything in our parish that could tell us that. So we're going to have weather stations throughout the parish that tells us we had, you know, 160 mile an hour winds or 80 mile an hour wind here sustained for 20 minutes, which allows us to actually give information to insurance and FEMA and everybody else. And so like the Main Street complete streets, that's a project that's going to run, if I'm not mistaken, from like Morgan Street all the way to Howard, and it loops around to the tunnel. And that's something that we can actually do things with better access for walking and making things more walkable and crosswalks and safer ways to walk around the parish. And then from there, we can actually build upon these projects by saying, okay, we're going to take this concept and apply it to other areas throughout the parish. But we have kind of how we started where it goes. You look at Activated Bayou, right? There's a project that we're working on right now. We had a phone call today with the Corps of trying to get Bayou Terrebonne cleaned all the way to the Parish line, right? And we're modifying the scope because it was going to be a dredge to -6. When some of these areas, it might be a 3, or some areas it might just need to get rid of debris. So we're working on trying to better allocate that funding that we've been having since 2012 to get that entire project done, and then take that same project that we're doing here and do it throughout the rest of our bayous to where our waterways are healthy, maintained, and used and able to drain, especially when we need them in a water event. So again, different projects based on feedback and studies and things that we've been doing, but really working to make sure we get funding to our residents here almost 4 years after a storm. We're going through, again, some approval processes and things we have to do to meet the HUD requirements. But that once we do that, better get some things rolling and start seeing some a shot in the arm for what recovery means for our parish.
So Jason, if for some reason you submit all this information and they come back and say, well, it's not approvable, so you've spent all this money.
So we hadn't spent any money. When we submit a plan, right, we submit a plan, they say, Parish weather stations, we think that's a good idea. Give us an application. We have to turn that application into them. They approve it. We spend the money and they reimburse, but we're making sure the money's spent. Like, for example, we got to go to bid for stuff, right? We got to meet all the requirements that you would deal with government, that if we do all that, we're going to get refunded. Now, if something's not done right, yes, there's a possibility we'd have to give that money back, but our responsibility is to make sure we do it right, right? I mean, it's any money we get at the federal level, especially, but state level, a lot of that's got stuff tied to it. It's got to meet certain requirements. Like these projects have to maintain what they're built for 5 years. So if you get 3 years down the road and say we're working with Fletcher on this aviation program and Fletcher doesn't do something or whatever, we have to take over that aviation program and make sure it goes to fruition for that 5-year period. But that's why we have agreements in place that says who's responsible for what, and what you got to do, and that these requirements have to be met. So
Concern is that, they say they're going to give you the money, and then, here now, they're going to have some cuts, severe cuts.
as of right now, anything that we see has a potential to be cut has been cut before you even get the opportunity of spending and not being reimbursed, right? And we saw like one of the programs we had on here was a jail. We had a BRIC application. Everybody's seen the article about BRIC. We had an application in to get money from BRIC to help partially pay for a jail. We were going to do the rest of it here, but we had to do something different here because we didn't have approval for BRIC, and you got to have a full project. Then next thing you know, BRIC gets pulled. Well, we've never historically received any money from BRIC. We had the opportunity to, but we haven't received money from BRIC at the end of the day. So right now, I mean, we hadn't lost anything except for maybe an application that we did, Let me get up here and I'll come back to you.
For the studies, do the parish have to pay for the studies when they're conducted?
So with these programs, and everything has a dollar amount tied to it, that dollar amount has an admin perspective to it. It's got a program manager, it's got a study, and so, for example, the wastewater study, the wastewater master plan study, I think that's $1.5 million. That's just a study. But if you look at one of the other projects, like the community centers, there's enough money in there to do a study and actually build hopefully 1 or 2 community centers with that. But we'll have a plan for all of them, right? We say we identify 10 community centers that are needed. Let's build the first top two priorities. And look, part of this process is to, when we're doing a study, to get feedback, have conversations, let everybody, get feedback from the masses of, if we had to do a community center that we all agree in the parish that this one's the most important, it's got the greater need, then second down all the way to 10. But with the study, we'll have a list of 10 so that when we get more funding that we can apply to something like community centers, all right, number 3's next. Let's go ahead and start doing number 3. But we'll have all those data and all those numbers to be able to move forward with other grant funding opportunities.
The pump stations, is that new pump stations, and where are they going to be?
So the Geraldine pump station that's actually converting a barge that we have in Bayou Black. So if you look at, the different water management systems we deal with in here, you got the 11B, which is, I think we're actually sitting in right now. And then you go west and you have all the water that comes out of the Chacahula Basin. So the Corps of Engineers said you got 3,000 CFS of water that comes through there. And so Geraldine is the final piece at 1,000 CFS, with Hanson being 1,000 and Elliott Jones being 1,000. They said the final piece is another 1,000, which is actually at a barge that we're going to end up redoing and adding a pump station to. The Bayou Terrebonne pump station is also a new pump station that, again, these are pump stations that don't exist. With some of this funding, there are limitations on whether or not you could build something from scratch or redo something, and it's just different rules for different kind of projects with that.
Don't you fix the one at Bonanza?
Yeah, what about
Bonanza
that?
pump
So the plan with Bonanza is when we implement the Bayou Cane one, which is behind Rouse's, the whole concept is to take that water, pump it into that 4,000 acres and retain it. And with retaining it, less water's in the system because Bonanza will pump, and if the intercoastal is high, that water that Bonanza pumps goes nowhere. So we're talking about holding in water that even Bonanza has to pump less, so the intercoastal gets to a level that allows us to release that water back into it and get flowing out.
And take all the trees out, it might work.
We are working on that. That's back to that Activate the Bayou project. And
Time to clean it.
yes, I agree. Yes, sir.
The community centers. Back in October, November 2023, when the grants were coming in, when I talked to Lady Black, and we got together in about 2.5 hours, we submitted for a grant for a community center. Okay? And February 19th of 2024, Christopher Pulaski told me he was going to submit the grant that I personally did for my community. So what happens, so I understand now that you're going to put all the community centers in one box and decide who gets
So
community centers.
when you say you submitted a grant, do you know you submitted a grant too?
Christopher Pulaski could take.
Okay, so you don't have money.
So,
But I wonder if, so we did some town halls, but we did situations like this where we sat down with people and said, give us your feedback. That meeting was to understand that community centers is important, right? From there, we had to apply for the grant. We still don't have approval on that grant yet because we're still waiting for our application to go through. That's going to start off with a study. But the fact that you talked about wanting a community center, put it on a priority list to make sure.
Christopher, you can talk to Christopher about it because Christopher told me he was submitted in February 19, 2024. And I think he may be able to get approval of the council. I don't know, but he said it's going to be a year to a year and a half before all that was approved.
So the only thing I could understand is that these applications were due November of 24. And you might have went to Chris and said, we want a community center here. Right.
No, I didn't go. I met Chris at they had a meeting at the Houma Center. I think Wayne was there.
Yeah, that's the information gathering sessions that we had.
I was given the name to talk to this lady, Nikki Black, because we had to submit for a grant for the community center. That's what I was at the time. So she helped me. She and I, about 2 hours, we went through all the why, who, when, and where. And so I talked to Chris at the city council. If you go back to the city council meeting, I think it was February 2024, somewhere in there. And we talked about it. He told me he was going to submit it well, if not, probably before, but he was submitting them on February 19, 2024.
Okay.
And so
I can just tell you that since I've been here, I've not been aware of any things we submitted for a community center outside of this right here.
well, you can talk to
Right?
Chris.
And I'm going to talk to Chris. What I'm going to do is we're going to get the information. I want to get the phone number. And I see Noah's texting Chris back there right now.
I've talked to him many times we talked about it, and I just was wondering, seems like I'm getting lost in the process somewhere because now the community centers and everything. Because I read the FEMA, low-income, underdeveloped communities, the FEMA money, right? It was coming in Parish, right?
So you say FEMA money. We have HUD money through OCD. Outside of that, I'm not aware of any other FEMA money.
The first block of money I think y'all spent downtown home revitalization, two blocks of money.
Okay, that 2 blocks of money got put into 1 block of money, and those applications were due November 30th. We're still working on them to approve the community center one, and we had a meeting with them yesterday that I think that might be one that's hopefully we're going to get approved at soon. But the state changed the process as we were doing it, right? They were saying you had to have some stuff turned in here, some stuff turned in there. One was in January, I think it got voted on January 8th. The other one was gonna be March and ended up being April, it was February, ended up being March. All that got converted to turn your applications in by the 24th. We turned everything in. It was supposed to have everything approved by the end of the year. Through issues that we're working with that say things can or can't be done a certain way, of those, these were approved. We have another 11 that we're still working with OCD to get approved. One of those is community centers, which is to first do a plan and then take some of the rest of that funding and build a couple or one of community center based on how big a community center is needed and how much money is left after you do the plan, which I'm hoping we have a
I went
lot.
through the whole process and it was $1.6 million. Okay?
Yeah, well, I'll find out. And again, when you talk FEMA money, we talk this. If you're talking about another process.
No, I'm talking about this money.
Okay, so the application for community centers, I think, is at $6 million. And it's to do a study to figure out where we need them, right? And then from there, start implementing. And that's, whatever's happened, whatever's been changed to where we are, this is where we are now.
Because it doesn't sound like anything like when I put the application, it sounds like everything that flipped on his ears.
And it might have. It happens, right? They'll go, you got this funding, we're not doing this anymore, we're changing the way this program works. Unfortunately, with us waiting on money from FEMA, again, we're still waiting on $125 million of $250 million that they obligated us, and I'm still waiting on them to approve another $105 million for a power plant almost 4 years after a storm, right?
Wasn't this money supposed to be for low-income, underdeveloped communities?
This money right here is for resiliency and economic development, and it's got to work in a low to moderate income, which is 42 or 43% of our parish. It's low to moderate income.
So that's what the community centers coming in with the low to moderate income. What's the community?
So we're going to do a study. That study is going to identify where the community centers are needed. What's that?
How many years it take to
We have to have this money spent by November of 27. So we're not doing studies like we're talking about doing, and look, I hate to use the word study. That's all we say, plans. What's that?
come down to us, they've been saying that for years.
Who's they?
All presidents.
Okay.
All of them.
Okay. When's the last time parish president came here? I'm curious. So look, it's confusing. It's so many different buckets of money. What I'm telling you guys is we're gonna work with the residents to come up with a plan to address community center needs based on the fact that somebody brought it up in a meeting like this and it made it to a list, right? So we're gonna work through communities. We're gonna figure out where community centers are needed. If we need 10, we're gonna fund as many as we
You
can.
had a particular number for community centers in the grants. And I found one, and we'll have to find it at home, but I have, I'm sure I have the particular number for community centers. But she was working with me, she was working with some people.
I'm about to find. I'm not familiar who that is. I'm about to find out who that is. My ladies are shaking their head.
Chris
Right. And Chris couldn't make it tonight. He had something with his kid. He'd be here if it wasn't for something we had kid with his kid tonight.
You'll see Chris before I will, I'm sure.
Well, we got a piece of paper to gather information. You know, if it's related to FEMA hurricane recovery, this is the program, and we got $6 million in.
I went to the conference several times, and this is the problem. The money you gonna do the study, we can use that in our community and do something with it. The money you gonna do a study with, give me $6 million.
So where do you think we need a community center?
Well, we need one in, I live in Levittown,
Okay.
okay? So.
So Gray, Levittown.
Yeah, Johnson Ridge, elsewhere.
How many we at now? So which one of those is first?
Well, look.
That's the conversation right now. If you go to Klein Pledger, you're going to Village East first. So what we're doing is we're going to put together all our residents. We're going to figure out. And I'll give you a good example. I just went with the Gibson community group, and they took over the school. Right? To me, with that building, that's an opportunity to build one less community center there, but maybe do some things for them. Right? Versus another area that doesn't have anything at all, like Village East, like Gray, right? So when I look at these, and we're saying we're going to work with the community because there might be 20 community center needs. The only way to figure out which one gets first is to kind of put together a plan, work as a community, and make sure we all agree, as much as we can agree, that this one's the number one part. So without me knowing that a community center is going to cost $1 million, $2 million, $4 million, $10 million, depending on what that community needs, and what's going to be included in that community center versus what's already there, right? Like we have in Gibson, where we have a school that we're able to work off of. That's why we do a study and a plan. And I hate studies. I hate plans. But at a certain point, if I don't know for like the wastewater, if I don't know where the needs are and how much those needs cost, I can't even begin to go after money. We know this funding coming in with the community center. Number one, that $117 million is not enough, right? They're giving.
We're going to build, do all this other stuff, but we low income community, we want to see something. This is my thinking for my community, and I'm sure all communities. In my mind, the community center is a place where we can be a second to the school system with our kids, teaching our kids how to pass these tests, these different leap tests or whatever. I already have at my church, I got 16 computers that donated. So we're doing a homework study, we're trying to get these kids. We need mental health people coming in talking, because we got a lot of mental health in our community that people ignore, but I see it and I live it every day. You know, different streams of things. We was going to build a part of that community center could be for like a pantry, a food pantry. So we can feed whosoever will. As long as we got food, we're going to feed people. And part of that community center was going to be a daycare. My grandson came from Texas. He couldn't get in a daycare. He been in a private school for 2 years. So we know it's a need for daycare. So we have a plan that I talked to Nikki about. We wrote it all up. And you know, you're talking a different story than the last panic Thursday, right? Because I was supposed to submit an application, and then if it get approved by the council, they go over to the next, to FEMA, and they approve or deny. That's what I was told at the time.
Well, we're going to find out what that program is. When you start.
It's under 17.6 million.
Right, and so I can only deal with what I have since I've gotten here, right? And what I know is when I got here, I was inaugurated on the 4th. On the 8th, that first plan, I think it was 8 projects, was voted on, right? That was like 4 days in office, council voted on that. Then we had to turn in another one about 60 days later. Based on that, from what I could see and everything we've ever done, the community center's part of that was $6 million to do a study and implement, right? I've not seen it change. The council members had copies of everything. As far as we all could see, and working with our teams, it's been that, as far as I'm back as I can look.
I had to talk to Chris because he told me it's going to take a year, so why should I keep nagging him all the way for years? In a year and a half, we start getting some money. So mine's been a year and a half, right? It's a year and a half, and some of the money's starting to come in. But we was...
Now, no money, and just to make sure, no money's coming in, right? We have to spend this money. So whatever we do with a plan or study or building a community center, the parish is going to foot that bill. And if we do everything we're supposed to, we procure a white, we follow all of HUD's rules, they'll give us the money back. So there's no checks, there's no money being given out. It is, we got a plan for $6 million to do a study for what the community center need is in Terrebonne Parish. And then from there, let's build 1 or 2. Because look, great conversation. When I look at community center, based on what I did after the hurricanes and all the hurricane recovery stuff we did, is whatever we build, I hope it's category 5, because we need a place to work out of right after disasters, because I was working out of a fire station that didn't have a roof on it in Pointe-au-Tremble, right? So if I build a community center and I don't build it to that standard, then when a storm comes through, I'm going to lose that community center. Well, I might only afford 1. So if I got to build 1 community center with that money, because that's not a lot of money, right? Then where does that community center get built? And I got 9 council members that all have an idea where that community center is going to get built. To me, the only fair way to do it is to get everything together and again, get all council members together and say, this is the study that was put together. This is what was identified as the number 1 priority, the biggest need in our parish. This is 2, 4, 10, 20. Let's get that 1 built. While we're getting that 1 built, we're going to try to find the money for the rest, right? Yes, sir.
I think as we look at the crowd and we understand that what this gentleman right here is saying is low to moderate income. And the statement was that 40% of Terrebonne Parish is low to moderate income. And if we walk in here and we look at the fact that most of these people might fall within that category, but over the period of years, decades, like this lady said over here, parish president after parish president, That mindset, I meet with these people frequently, they give my that mindset, even though he don't fully understand what he's saying, the presumption of $117 million on 117.6, they have to see, they have to be in that neighborhood for them to support what we're trying to do as a whole. I can tell Mr. Joseph.
I do understand what you're saying, because I talked to the people that was in charge. I do very well understand what I'm saying.
Like Mr. Joseph is saying, I'm pretty sure there's another community like Smithbridge, low to moderate income. Those are areas that they want to see focus on. And that's generally what it is. I understand his understanding of it.
You was at the council meeting when we talked to Chris about what does he consider low income
What is being said now, sir?
income.
This is what is being said now. He's saying that we have to spend the money prior to. Your conversation with Mr. Pulaski may have been different from what he's presenting here today.
Well, I understand what you're saying. I do understand. But at the time when we talked at the city council meeting. It's on the record twice. I went to the city council meeting. And we talked about the community centers, and we talked about the application process. I filled out an application with Nikki Black. I don't know if she's still there or not. We talked to Christopher. And so I filled out an application for my community, for a community center, and we come up with a number of what we were going to do in that center. It was $1.6 million. That was the number. Okay. When I talk to Chris Casey, I'm going to submit all this stuff on February 19, 2024.
So that's where I feel like we're getting confused, because anything with this funding, we hadn't taken an application one from a resident, because that's not how this project works. So there might have been another FEMA project, and look, was it related to Gustav Ike? Was it related to some other storms? I don't know. Ida, right? FEMA might have said, we're going to do this, and then turn around and change to this, right? But what we're doing, for example, I'm trying to think which one's on here, if there's any of these that apply, but the support the seafood industry, for example, is going to be an opportunity for us to get funding to then pass on to the residents. They call that direct assistance. Well, in the direct assistance concept, certain things have to be done. Versus when we build a pump station, it's a whole different, there's no application to fill out, right? So when I do the seafood program, when I do the small business grant program, those are going to be applications that we get residents or businesses to fill out to get money. I'm not saying that didn't happen, and we're going to find out with those two names you mentioned to understand what was that, what happened to it, you know. It does change. I'm telling you, stuff has changed so much since I've been in office with just this one project. It's crazy, right? And then you look at stuff that was available and not even available anymore.
I just found out the lady that you spoke with no longer works with her.
But I'll find out from Chris what that was about. Because again, if you fill out an application for a community center for $1.6 million, number one, that in fact you've already done that, one little list thing we got to study, right? I mean, any data we have like that we can use, we're gonna have to validate or get new pricing and appraisals and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, I really want to make sure that we're clear in what we say, that you believe what we say, and I know that's got to be earned, right? When I ran for office, because I didn't have a lot of trust in government, right? I looked at it and said, when I could see millages not renewing or having so much trouble getting renewed, and whenever people talk about that we're the highest taxed in the country, and I get the data together to show we're 40th in property tax, we're middle of the road in sales tax, and when you show that you're not at the top, it comes back to me that people don't feel like they're getting the value for the dollar with their tax dollar. And that's why I start having that conversation and saying things need to be fixed, things need to be upgraded, things need to be, everything, roads, bridges, trash, grass, all the stuff that I believe really relate to what I call quality of life. That's why I'm here, right? I'm here because I want to hear your concerns. I want you to know you have a voice. I want you to write down issues on a piece of paper and we fix that and prove to you that we're doing what we're doing. Yes, ma'am.
Brother Honor Adams, his daughter had surgeries in Texas. But he wrote down 5 different things and sent to your office stating, and one was a community center and great. if you can get the different areas that's asking for a community center, let them be a committee, just the ones that done wrote that down, discuss them, and then you can go from there to figure out which is the most. But just like he's saying, you have his word, he's the Johnson Ridge. We asked him for Gray. So, and then somebody you said in Smith Ridge. So if you get one point person from each one of them that's representing that community, then you can go forward. But it's just like I call Mr. Houma. I'm gonna call him every day, starting tomorrow. Because our bayou has not been drudged with trees, going on 4 years. They skipped us completely. Then when they got back some funds, they still went a different area because y'all don't want the water to just be
We're
stagnant.
talking about right here, right? We're talking about this bayou right here.
Great
Right.
bayou, great bayou,
Right.
yeah,
So
yeah.
we've been having money since 2012 to dredge Bayou Terrebonne to -6. And it never got done because that's not enough money to do. So we did a project when we got in office, and we went from Lafayette Street to West Side Boulevard. And we did what was called a cleared snag, right? And when that cleared snag, it's getting rid of the big debris, stuff that shouldn't have been removed with a hurricane. We are where we are. And so with that, we got an idea of what that costs per mile to get something like that done. And so right now, we're going through a permit process change. Had a phone call on it today to work on that same process of cleaning up this bayou from the intercoastal to the parish line, right?
Yeah, but start in Gray.
So,
Gray has not been touched.
okay,
in
so
4 years
if I
already.
dredge Gray, where does all that go?
He said he's gonna take the trees out first, but they wait for one permit. They just wait for one.
All right, so are we talking about the Francine cleanup? Is that the project y'all are talking about?
I believe so.
Yeah, 'cause you're right here, are you right here?
So 4 years ago, the last time we did anything like that, I'm sorry, let me stand up and walk over here because I apologize that I worked all day.
Yes, sir. Me too. I me too.
Yes, ma'am, so I'm sure you're just as tired as all of us, right?
That's right, yeah.
But, so I believe we all, I did meet some of y'all before at the church in Gray, and we discussed that, remember that?
Yes.
Okay, so we're still working with it. The last thing I told y'all, we're still working on that. Mr. Bazeron here has got a direct contact with the colonel, okay? And he and I and Noah were on a call today with him before we came here to get that permit that we're talking about, that we're still talking about, okay? And so you can call me anytime you want, man.
Yeah, you told me, I just wanted to know if you want me
Yes,
to call you
ma'am.
every day or once a week.
So,
But I wouldn't call you.
Come have a cup of coffee with me any day. I'm right there in Gray.
Because you could come and get in the boat. And I guarantee you, all the way to the Carson Light, you won't be able to get through the bottom.
So-
And you and I can both get in there. Yes.
so we're actually talking about two different projects.
Big part.
We're talking about two different projects now. So the project with this permit is a post-Francine debris cleanup, which that project's will probably come through first before the other project that we're talking about.
That's gonna be your.
So we're gonna make a pass and clean out some debris, and then we're gonna make another pass and really get the mud, get the heavier debris, all that kind of stuff done, and it can't happen soon enough. So
Well, then can you, you promised us, when you came to that meeting in Greek at the art center at the church, make sure it get cleaned up. You made all kind of promises.
yes, ma'am,
Still-
and it will. Well, look.
I guess you're gonna be out and somebody else.
Oh no, it's gonna cut, trust me. So I'll tell y'all what happened. So we had a meeting, I had a meeting with the governor, I don't know, about 2 months ago at EOC, and we talked about stuff like this and the fact that how long these permits are taking. The next morning, I was on an email with him, the colonel of the Corps of Engineers, and somebody with the Department of Natural Resources. And the governor's like, get this done. And we're trying to figure out if we combine projects and, do a few other things. Since then, I've been phone calls with almost every other day. Where are we at? What's going on? So we were looking at combining the projects. Said, well, if you do that, the debris cleanup's going to get held up. Nope, don't want to do that. Let's move forward with debris cleanup. So the debris cleanup, we're waiting on approval for that permit because the state's got to approve it, the Corps got to approve it. We were doing the other project, and then they said, well, it's changed. You got to reapply. So the conversation was, I don't want to start from scratch. I don't want this to be 6 months. And so we're having conversations on a regular basis, and I got the governor going, they said 6 months. He's like, not acceptable, right? So we're getting the right people in the room, in the conversations to say, it's time for this to change. It's time for us to work better. It's time for us to work more efficiently. And we're working on that with DOTD, we're working on that with FEMA, we're working on that with the Corps. And trust me, it won't happen soon enough for me.
Action. Question. Can you give us an estimation, how long this will take, that this will?
Now, talking about the debris pickup, the first project? I did.
I will make y'all a promise tonight that will be done before the end of this year. Okay? And I will make sure that I come back and let y'all know as soon as we have a date. We will make sure everyone knows. I will get with Councilman Harding, and I will make sure he knows, and Mr. Bajon and his communications will definitely make sure everyone in this room, when we have a start date, y'all know just as soon
Look,
as I know.
today was a phone call that they're like, well, we think we could do this. And I'm like, yeah, we need that faster. And don't make me go tell Daddy, right? I'll go tell Daddy. He'll come in there and make sure you get it done. And that's what sometimes we just got to do. We got to go, enough's enough. This hasn't been working. People have been waiting too long. And again, that's one of the reasons why I ran and got in here, because I think we could do things faster. And it's time for residents to start seeing results. I'm 100%.
So,
Yes.
And Bayou was dredged from the Coteau Bridge to the mall after one of the hurricanes. They went in and they vacuumed the loose leaves, stuff out the bayou, and pumped all that stuff on the Coteau Road.
I wouldn't even call that a dredge.
They
I'd call that,
vacuumed the loose
yeah.
stuff on the bottom.
Yeah.
They didn't dredge anything.
Right.
All the loose impairment that can work loose, you vacuumed it out. They had a little boat with a vacuum, big old centrifugal pump. And it took them about 2 months to do it, but it cleaned it to the mall.
Right. So we're going to get
The
it.
only time it's been cleaned or dredged. I'm 92 years old.
I don't remember, I can't tell you last time any Bayou I know has been dredged or clean. Like, when I look back, I'll be 50 this year, so,
But
you know.
when they really screwed it up is when they built that bridge in Shreveport. They got a big S curve there. And about 4 or 5 years ago, they had a drought. And you wouldn't need a dredge. All you needed was a drag line to pick it up and put it in the truck, all the way to Gilbert. Yep. Of course, all Parish presidents back then.
We talked about, in Louisiana, we talked about sidewalks. We talked about the kids, they got businesses down there, the kids going to school. And I didn't hear any more about that.
To get the funding for that, we are going to need y'all's continued support. We can't just ask for something, right? It's a team effort, right? What kind of support we need? Okay, so South Central Planning, all right, has a program called Safe Routes to Public Places. So we need to identify where those people belong to, right? I need that help. And together, we can get it done, right? That's all right. I can't do it by myself, just like y'all can't do it by yourselves, right?
And I want to say this,
I'll bring you the newspaper.
one of the worst things we deal with trying to fund, roads, bridges, sidewalks, right? Every bit of money we get coming in, can't use it. Another, nope, can't use it. Nope, can't use it. I mean, I feel like every day it's like, can't use it, can't use it. And it's, you know, when I look at us trying to work through the IAJA infrastructure bill, and trying to get some funding for those kind of projects, that's the thing that we fight for. So we have a metropolitan planning organization with South Central Planning, and we work to make sure that they get stuff on their list to help it kind of prioritize. They did a study trying to figure out a survey recently where what's walkable, what's not walkable, how people get around with bicycles and everything else. And so when David's talking about what he's talking about is that making sure, again, on a piece of paper today, write down, I need a sidewalk, right? And look, I would hope we'd have captured it already, but I want to make sure we capture it today so that we get that information to the right people. And at the end of the day, sometimes I got to decide between dredging a bayou and building a sidewalk, right? And that's where we work with our council members, with our residents to say, we don't have enough money to do everything we need to do. And I gathered a list to do everything as of today, right now, $770 million worth of work. I'm still looking for $570 million of that money, right? So with that, as money comes in, priority. And that's where you come to some of these studies that we don't have, because I couldn't tell you what it's going to cost to do sewage and gray. But once I have that information, I can either go after funding, or when funding comes in, That's the next one on the list. Let's get that one done first, then second. And again, sharing that information with everybody so that everybody knows. This is where we're at. This is the timeline, right? I'd hate to be blunt about it, but like that sidewalk, if it's not on the list, it might not even get done in my first term or either term, right?
No, when I talked to Mr. Rome, he talked about he had to apply for a grant to get it done. I mean, I know, and when we talk about priorities, what's priority to you is different priority for us.
Well, safety is my number one priority. So anytime we deal with anything that's unsafe, a good example is when the road came up at St. Charles and Tunnel, I declared a state of emergency and I told David, go fix that road, right? We got out there, DOTD shut us down and had it fixed by that Saturday. That is where, instead of that money going to something else, I was gonna put that money right there, even if we didn't get reimbursed by the state because it was unsafe. We had school buses going across it every day. So when I say priority, I mean say unsafe. Then I look at the most vulnerable. I look at who has the worst need, right? And when we talk about priorities, we're not making that decision, right? We're working. We want to get a group in here that does that for a living so they can gather all the right data. And then at the same time, work with the groups of people that are in these communities, right? We've historically done projects in the past that we might do a drainage project and maybe didn't get feedback. And that wasn't to any fault of our public works director or the community. Could have been direction of whatever who was in charge at the time, right? I think it's important that we look at projects, that we look at how things are affected, because the people that live in that community know how the water stands and how the water flows. And we don't want to come in there and fight against something just because an engineer said so. We want that feedback on everything that we do, which is why I'm here tonight, right? We want the feedback. I want to know, I want our team to hear what's important to you guys and what you hadn't heard from and what's not fixed yet. And start giving you regular updates and feedback on that kind of stuff. Even if it's me coming back, at a certain time, they'd say, hey, when I make the next trip over here, we had 10 things on the list, 7 of them are done, right? Now we got 7 more. So that's what I hope. I don't believe him, but go ahead.
Let's think about it. For the community centers. There's property in Shreveport for sale across from St. Bridget's Catholic Church. So you got Joseph Ridge, elsewhere in the town in the Bridge. How about we think about a community center that can serve all 4 communities?
I'm down for that kind of stuff. Are the other communities down for that? And that's where we run into the problem, right? So let me ask y'all a question. If I could build one killer community center to serve all the areas for $10 million, or it would cost me $20 million to build all, and somebody's not going to get one, which choice would you prefer? Right? Oh, your question? I thought you were answering the question. Anybody want to answer that question for me? Before asking another question. What's that? Right. You know what I've learned in politics? Half of you is not going to like my answer either way. Right? So with that, that's where the study comes into play. These are people that do that for a living, that can sit down with the right people, right, and gather the information and says, Council of Parish President, this is what we studied. This is what we see as number one. Do y'all concur? And again, it might be, we might have to make a decision that's best for the parish to build one that services 3 districts or 3 communities versus we build one and one that the other 2 don't get services and I got to go build another one over here. And they run into that same problem, right? And look, I love to give this comparison when we talk schools. Everybody wants schools like Texas. Who wants schools like Texas? Anybody? Everybody hear how nice the schools are in Texas? Right? Have you ever heard a bad thing about a school in Texas? So if they would have built, if this was Texas today, and we were to start building schools, we'd have 2 high schools, one on the east side, one on the west side, because that's how Texas does schools, right? They're bigger, they encompass more people. We're a community that likes to have the school. We built communities around schools, so we'd have to change the way we do stuff, and we wouldn't have 5 high schools, we'd have 2. So there's a pro and a con to doing things like other people do it. And that's where we say, well, we have our tie to it, our niche. And it's about, do I build something that's right here just for that one community? Or can I do something that serves multiple communities with abilities for transportation and other opportunities with sidewalks that maybe people can get around them? And that's where as a parish president, Carl Harding's got to worry about his district and also the parish. My main responsibility is I got to make sure we're doing what's best for the parish in every decision, right? And bringing in our residents' feedback from that, and then being able to push forward and say it may not please everybody. It may please half. It may please 75. But it's also a step in the right direction that maybe we could come back and find some other funding and build some smaller community centers, right? Or work off of a library or a fire station to build something that you can work out of post-disaster, right? I mean, there's a few different, and look, if I connect it to a fire station or a gym, I know I better use a different pot of money to get that built. But I'm trying to maximize the funding that we have with what we're being given. And the comparison I was going to give earlier was post-Francine, the federal government said they're going to give us, which is funny with the numbers, $117 million, and it's only going to go for housing. The problem is, if you compare the amount of houses that we lost and how much it costs for that, we need 130, but we only got 117, and we can only use it on housing. Yes, sir.
Well, how much funding is available for the summer camps?
So-
Because this is something we need immediately for this coming summer.
Right. So where?
So, one of the biggest facilities that would help in our North Terrebonne area would be in the Shreva area.
So do we have a camp already there?
No.
Okay.
No.
So I know we have a pot of money for summer camps, right?
Okay.
So,
How can we get to that pot?
so say that's, and I'm gonna give you a number, $250,000, right?
Okay.
How many communities y'all think we have?
Well, just going by the record.
Rec's 11. We got more communities than that, though, right?
Okay.
So real quick, say we got 20 communities. I'm gonna divide that $250,000 by the 20 communities. At this point, I don't know if we've even been doing that, and I'm not saying anybody did or didn't do anything wrong. But one of the things that we're doing by creating the quality of life department is having them look at and manage to make sure all communities are getting equal opportunity and looks, right? Because we might have spent $40,000 in this one and $10,000 in that one. I want to make sure, and when I look at the quality of life and I look at community outreach and going into these communities and understanding what the needs are, maybe you need tutoring or maybe you need something with sports, right? And identifying, once I start having those conversations, and it's like, well, maybe I have other pockets of money or things that we can do based on the need that they have. And at the same time, when I talk about an after-school program being a community outreach program versus calling it tutoring, I then have an opportunity for people to get more involved because they think tutoring, and I don't have anything I could do to apply to tutoring because I'm not a tutor, right? Right.
Yes.
And
Because of course you know that in our community, if the children are out of school, then the senior centers is going to suffer because now the seniors that would normally go to the senior center is there having to deal with the children. That gives the parents, the working parents, an opportunity or to know that their children going somewhere. And so it's a win-win for the whole community if there's a summer camp.
but you've historically not had one.
Exactly.
Right.
We've been fighting for
So,
several years now.
That's what I want to understand better because we have some summer camps that happen. And if you have 5 of them, they're probably all 5 different, right? Because they have different needs for different areas. And I know we have some areas that are not doing anything.
I know Riding Black always have theirs because those citizens in that area, they really stand up and they fight for that camp every summer.
Now I wonder, not
standing
having it
up
right in front of me,
and fighting for one right now.
and I don't know if I have the numbers in front of me and I can find out, but if not, they could be paying that with their rec millage, and their rec millage is 15 mils, right? So, but I don't know if what I'm saying is that that's actually been driven by the rec department, and we might not have any part in that, right? So part of what I'm wanting to make sure is as a summer camp perspective, that we look at that as a parish need and make sure that we're equally distributing and working with our communities to where maybe we give each community $10,000 and that's what we can do. Yes, sir.
Actually, it's at around $200,000 Candace, who's sitting in the back, she has the answer to that. All the communities did not actually have funding for a day camp. I think Shreveport, their area, they had one before. Out of the $200,000 that we actually budgeted, that was some money returned. I think the question came up. People in Chauvin, they didn't use theirs. The community with Rec 11, they have two different ones, but the money is allocated and the applications are applied for through Ms. Malton. Am I correct, Ms. Malton?
The applications do not come to me, no sir. That goes through the quality of life department.
Okay, and the $200,000 is actually budgeted, and then they apply through quality of life?
Yes, sir. It's $150,000, and the rec districts will submit their budget and their resolution to quality of life department for it to be approved and to have access to the funding.
But we've actually lowered the funds from $200,000 to $150,000.
We did because we've never spent up to the $200,000.
Okay,
So we've just budgeted what.
in. And that's what I'm just trying to get them to understand, that, you know what I mean, how to apply. And then if you're applying and we don't have enough money, maybe we can actually make the budget adjustments to actually suffice for the needs of the people.
So if you get anything out of tonight, there's an opportunity to apply for
It comes from the rec district.
that exactly summer camp.
We're having a good discussion.
There you go.
Not yet, we're not having that, sir. Not yet.
Okay.
Let me ask these questions.
Okay.
All right, now we have this discussion.
Jason, just real quick, it has to be through the rec districts and apply.
Rec districts have to apply.
Yes.
Oh, thanks for that clarification.
Rec districts have
Find
to
your
apply,
rec
it can't be an individual.
Let's get it. All right.
I've got 3 questions.
3 questions.
Yes, sir. In Lee Town, we need more lights. Almost hit a man last night on the bicycle. I don't know what hit was on his line. All of a sudden, he was right. We need a sidewalk to get the bicycles off the street. We need lighting to see the pedestrians. And we also need a speed limit.
You have a speed limit or you need it lowered?
You need to lower the speed.
Okay.
It's 45 and they run
I
through
got a
that.
guy right here.
They run through that like a I don't know how.
Oh, DOTD?
I don't know how many of these guys get killed. Coming down there by St. William Church. We need a speed reduction, we need a red light, we need sidewalks, and we need more lighting. Now, if I would have just paid close attention, if a car would have been coming, I would have hit the car or hit the man. Good thing, there was no car coming, so I had to do that to go around. So we need a sidewalk, pedestrians or bicycle riders, and we need lighting, very bad.
Now, is that lighting, correct me if I'm wrong, does that go through the lighting district or is that because it's state? That can go through the lighting district? There you go.
Yeah.
Some Carl can work on right now.
Need to be lowered.
We can make the request. If they say no, I could go complain to a Congress, a legislator or the governor.
Church there and a church. There's always kids going back and forth to school, going to church, and they flying through here like it's a restaurant.
To help you out a little bit with that, what we were talking about with the sidewalks.
Yeah.
So South Central Planning has something called the Local Road Safety Program.
Okay.
And they got lots of money. And they're always looking to give it away. And I'm always looking to spend it. But we need help going and get that money.
Is that the same area or different area that we were talking about the sidewalk wall? Same area?
So they can take care of your speed limit there.
Yeah.
We can, and look, call my office.
We wrote it down. Y'all wrote it down on a piece of paper?
And we'll talk.
Okay, he got a piece of paper. We're gonna get you that piece of paper. We're gonna look to make that happen.
Yeah.
And again, there's some stuff we gotta request. If they tell us no, we gotta just try to fight it and everything. Yeah, a couple more if you don't mind.
All right.
Yeah, a couple more?
That's all I got too.
That's all you got?
That's enough right there.
Okay, I'm good. I thought you had more than that. Yes, sir.
I got a question. My question is, why are we supporting the seafood industry?
Because our seafood industry is very vital to our parish, and those people are struggling too. They really were affected by the hurricane.
Isn't that a for-profit industry? We're supporting a for-profit industry with taxpayers' dollars.
So, you know, when I look at the plight that the fishermen have been through, and I think the ultimate answer is at some point there might have to be a subsidy. Now, there's a tariff that just got announced,
Yeah.
right? So at the end of the day, we are subsidizing food with taxpayer dollars across the country. For whatever reason, our seafood industry has always been left out of that, right?
Yeah, we don't get anything from the seafood industry. Everything we get, we pay for it.
We get tax dollars from the seafood that gets sold, you know? But keep in mind, the requirements of this grant, it's got to be resiliency and economic development. So we might build a processing plant. We're going to do a study, but we might do cold storage, something that helps our seafood industry as a whole, which is an economic development tool. I'm actually working on a study to figure out the impact that seafood has on our region. Because 20% of the nation's seafood comes through our region, right? So when you look at that much seafood that comes through this region and the economic impact and the taxes that get paid that come back around to fix roads and fix all the things that are broken, what we're really doing is infusing that industry.
That's not even a drop per bucket. That's not even a drop.
We got to start somewhere, right? And so look,
I just think there are much more important things than supporting the for-profit industry. I mean, just my opinion.
I appreciate that. And it's one of those situations where when we look at economic development and what that means for our region, if we were to lose the seafood industry in our region,
I don't think that ever happens.
all our fish is imported already, right? So right now we're trying to stop all the shrimp. So there's a 1.6 billion pound requirement of shrimp in the nation. We produce 225 million in the Gulf Coast. We could produce 500 million. So for us to have more of a market share would be beneficial to our state and our region with the funding we get back into place. You're never going to eliminate imports because that still has a 1.1 billion pound requirement of shrimp, right? So then you start looking at the tariffs and everything else, but that never makes it to the fishermen. So my question's always been, why don't we subsidize farmers? Like they're all producing food, and they're producing food to cover a need. And I don't know if everybody knows this or not, but shrimp became popular when there were rations for beef during the World War I and II, and that's how shrimp became so popular. So shrimp feeds our world, right? Shrimp feeds our area, and the revenue coming in from the shrimp sold benefits our parish. And so as one of the top industries, when I look at oil and gas and fisheries being our two top industries, and you look at the fact that we're doing an aviation program at Fletcher so we could train people to do stuff for aviation, whether it's mechanic or whatever it is. Maybe there's somebody that doesn't have a job or is in a low moderate situation that we could help get into the seafood industry and help them make a living and earning for themselves. That's why we're doing that study, to understand what's the need. Like what does the fishing industry need in our area? And it could be something as simple. They have right underneath the bridge here, people sell seafood and stuff. Giving them a better place to do that, make it easier for people to sell seafood to local residents or get into the schools.
You know, that's an industry that already have their own coalition, working with the federal government.
Who hadn't been helping them, by the way. Right? I mean, it's, look,
I mean,
with all this, we're definitely not going to make everybody happy.
We're still talking about taking taxpayer dollars and putting it into an industry that's for profit. Mm-hmm. And you're talking about, the taxes that would get accumulated. It's just a drop in the bucket when you think about it.
Yeah. Based on the studies and data we've collected.
How much is the study?
I'd have to I don't have the number right in front of me, but overall, again, all these projects are 4 million, 5 million, 6 million, again, when one of the things that were identified as a need in our area is that the seafood industry needs some support because it's dying, right? People are not fishing as much as they used to. I think when you look at the numbers, it's a quarter of what it used to be with just licenses. So an industry that's important and vital to our area is dying. I do feel like we have a responsibility to help save that, right? And we don't know the full impact, and that's why I'm trying to get a study done separate from this to understand if we were to lose the shrimping industry, how many millions of dollars would that affect our region with sales tax and revenue that if we lose that, I can't fix road and everything
I
else.
think the only way we lose the seafood industry is there's no more fish, no more shrimp, no more oysters in the water. That's the only way. Other than that, you're going to have fishermen.
Right, but that number's dropping every year. It is. So when you look at the licenses that we have for our parish, what it was versus what it is now. Right. That definitely affects it.
Why.
Right.
So other than that, there is no, you just don't get the logic.
So, again, somebody said at some point, and we gathered data that said we need to help the fishing industry, right? The seafood industry. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna try to help figure out how and what. And what we're doing might be a drop in the bucket, but when you look at how many people rely on that industry in our parish and the income that that brings in, it's big enough for us to be concerned about it, right? To say, can we help? What can we do to help? How much can we help? Again, it could be processing, cold storage. It could be something with the opportunity that even gives jobs, right? We might build something that puts people into work that need to work.
To me, I think that's a job for our congressmen, our senators.
I wouldn't disagree with you.
I don't think that's a job for the parish.
I hear you. And I appreciate your feedback. You know, it's not, and everything's not going to relate to everybody. What we're trying to do as a parish is help everybody as a whole with the issues we've been made aware of that need to be addressed, right? And I know the seafood industry is struggling. And look, you look at the tariffs that are being applied, that are being talked about now, that might fix it all, right? But it doesn't mean that some residents in our community maybe don't need some help still with that, right? You know, so if you look at, so think about it this way. Their livelihood was messed up with the storm, and maybe they didn't shrimp for a year. Maybe their boat was destroyed, right? No different than what we're trying to do with economic development and resiliency throughout the rest of the parish. Just one piece of it that we got to look at and figure out, if we don't do this and we lose that industry, what does that mean for our parish? And that's how I look at it. So, I appreciate your feedback. Any other questions? I don't want to get back into the presentation. No, she says no. I'll offer questions to begin with. Don't be sorry. Don't be sorry.
The roads, Rosedale and Linda Ann, is it both of those roads need an overlay on it?
So David shake his hand. Yep, that's on our list. That's what he's telling me.
That's on your list?
It's on my list, and as soon as I can get my hands on it is way up, it is, it really is. Linda Ann in that area, many of our streets, our smaller streets that are in this area, those streets, they're feeder streets is what they call them. They have been neglected for a long time. But the reason why is, like President Bergeron said, for us to get money for streets and for sidewalks, buy a lot of gas. Go buy lots of gas, because I get a quarter cent for every gallon of gas that you sell. So if you buy 4 gallons, I get a whole penny. Okay? So that's how I pay for your roads, is by a quarter cent per gallon of gas.
So with lighting, so it's the same process as...
So lighting's different. So we have lighting districts. They collect the millage, and whenever there's a need identified, the council will say, hey, I need to adjust or get money for a project, and they go through that process. And if it's in the parish utilities, we get it done. If it's not, then energy or secret gets it done. Yeah, you want to add to that?
Yeah, that's what it was. Okay. It's up and down. We activate the request. We share road lighting district. And again, we have to rely on our relationship with the speaker and to take care of some of the problems that we have.
So I'll just say this real quick. So like the Shreveport overpass, we've had a lighting issue. It's an underground issue. We've been patching. So we received some funding from Beryl Amity. She said, I want to make sure that gets done. That plugged a gap that we're going to be able to do with the lighting district also. So we're waiting on the agreements and the money to get all that rolling to get that fixed. But we're using money that was provided by Beryl Amity and money that was coming from the lighting district, because it was more money than what the lighting district had in its account. So we're in that situation, the state's stepping in and helping us with that particular one. So
I just informed
you said you had no more.
more.
What grant money though? Yeah. This is grant money too. I mean, It's probably 20 different grant monies, right? So let's get the information, we'll come back to you, yeah. Yes, sir.
Pretty much like you see like you didn't take out a
I can only hear one person at a time, please.
I'm not afraid to make a decision. Okay.
Everybody, I know that.
One thing I love to do is make
When it comes
decisions.
down to something, whether you're right or wrong, make a decision to get something moved. You said it might have been this in 2012.
Yep,
What we at, 2035?
yep. I agree. So guess what? We're gonna do something with that money.
It's the same.
Right.
4 different parish presidents. I don't see my daughter go to college and
And look, that's what,
we still in the same level.
and I'm not saying anything bad about somebody, but
Some people.
Noah and I got in and we said, wait, we got how much money? Where? Let's figure out how to do some of that money, right? And I'm not saying everybody else has tried either, right? Some stuff's maybe been done, but sometimes it's just like, well, maybe let's do it this way instead of that way, get more bang for the buck, and it's a conversation we're having today. So our vegetation's been a problem in our ditches, right? So
You can't even see the house out here. You know, see the red right on.
that's a different that's a different thing now. So I'm gonna just talk for the parish.
You gotta deal with the state on it.
Right.
It's in the grant.
Right.
So maybe it's starting in Baton Rouge, but we need to make some changes.
100%, and I've been having those conversations. But this is what we did at the parish level. David said, you know, we really could write our contract to get more bang for our buck. We need to put it to where they update a work order system. And through all that, we're gonna take a shot at handling vegetation in a different manner. And we actually would put a little bit more money into that already we've seen that the contractor we're working with is tearing through getting stuff cut and getting stuff that hadn't been cut in 8 years, right? So, and internally, as a parish, we were able to change the way we do business, write a different kind of contract, get more bang for our buck, and get some money into that to where we can say, at this time next year, vegetation should look different in Terrebonne Parish, right? And that's the decision we made. We're like, hey, David's like, I think I need to do this. And we got together and we're working on getting that done. At the same time, we're also working with the state to take over more cuts that they would pay us for. We requested 7 and we got 1. Maybe the next time I get 2, right? And with that, the state's gonna pay us to cut some stuff. But I'll tell you right now, when our tractors, right. So one of the things we've started doing is that as we're passing between that parish road and that parish road, and we pass right here and we see the grass is high on the corner, we'll just do a little pass to get that grass knocked down where at least you can see around the corner, right? And that's the kind of stuff that we're doing in the meantime. All right. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, y'all been talking about the roads, okay, so everybody have their issue in their community, but I want us to talk about 316. That's a road that is very bumpy. You can mess your car up. They got ditches on both sides. They have people walking from the Bon Jovi community to try to get to the store or come to the Highway 24 to catch a bus. And there's no way for them to go. And what if private citizens that don't want them on their property? What are they supposed to do? And they got ditches on both sides and the road is narrow.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a conversation around rural communities, right?
A person gonna have to get killed like they did years back when they put the lights up at interstate in Gray. They had quite a few people got killed before they put the lights up. So what if something like that is gonna have to happen in Gray on 316?
So I'll give a comparison. So I'm from Berg, right? Oh, I mean, can I finish here if you don't mind, sir? Yeah. So if I move on, I'll come to you. So I live in Berg. I got the same problem on Country Drive, right? There's no shoulders, there's no sidewalk or whatever. Across all our rural areas in our parish, sewage, sidewalks, lighting, speed limits, it's the same conversation in every room I'm in around the parish, right? And so when I look at 316 and say 316 is $5 million to redo, that's state. So if I spend $5 million, I got to take $5 million from something else, which will be parish roads, and go spend it on that. Now, what I do believe, if it's unsafe and somebody could lose their life, I've had our team go fill in holes. Martin Luther King went filling. I saw 2 cars bust their tires back to back. I said, call DOTD. If they don't fix it by the end of the day, go patch that hole. And I'm making a list, right? So in that situation, we meet with DOTD quarterly. And we're working on, and I want to get a list for everybody right now. There's a list of projects for the next year that they're saying they're going to get done. I think residents need to know at least that 316 or Grand Bayou or whatever road it is, this road right here is on a list to get worked on in the next 6 months to a year. And the ones that aren't, what does that look like? And that's where you look at the governor redoing DOTD, turning that thing upside down. This is one of the conversations I'm aware of. There's 700 bridges that are bad in the state. That group went to him and said, we're going to fix 14 this year. And he says, you need to go back to your office and fire everybody, because that is unacceptable, right? And that's what we're dealing with bridges and roads and grass, where we're telling the governor, let us do it and pay us for it, because we're going to be able to do more for the same amount of money. And the fact of him redoing DOTD, to me, that's the only real thing that's going to make a difference besides the stuff that we can repair that belongs to the parish, for example, right? Because 316, that's half Lafourche, half Terrebonne. So I'll do this lane, Lafourche do that lane. But at the end of the day,
On the side where it's real bad, it's on Terrebonne side.
I had that feeling. I did have that feeling, by the way. It's usually how it happens. But no, and so us making sure that again, I could put that funding towards something else. Whatever dollar I put to that.
Drive over our bridges. They say so many of them are in danger of being repaired.
I can guarantee you, any bridges in this parish that are in danger, that need repair, we've already closed. So you shouldn't feel unsafe about driving on bridges, because that group right there.
I would say, I don't like to brag, because I don't, but I would say Terrebonne Parish actually set the bar for the state with the replacement of bridges, starting in 2014, when the mandates came down from the federal government saying, y'all need to take care of your bridges. My team, my guys and girls did such a heck of a job on inspections and all. We have been able to get money. We just replaced the Sire Bridge on Woodlawn Ranch Road. That was the last bridge that was rated as unacceptable. All of our other bridges are at least acceptable, and there's one other bridge that needs to be replaced, and I'll tell you where it's at, 9th Street, right off of Hollywood Road. There's a little bridge, a lot of people don't even realize it's there. That bridge is going to be the next bridge that probably gets replaced in about a year. But other than that, I'll walk across and drive across any of the bridges, okay? And I'll do it with y'all, if y'all are free.
One second.
For example, this money is sitting. All this time when y'all do it.
Nope. It's at the state, at HUD. So we don't get this money until we build a project on there, do what they need to do to get reimbursed, and then they send us some money. Yeah, so we don't, there's no 117 million sitting in a bank account, because if that would have happened, I probably would have fixed a bunch of roads by now. Candace would be mad at me. Yeah. No, it's not sitting. No, sir. And that's what it is, a lot of the funding when it comes to the federal government and everything. I guess as good as mine at that one. Well, look, the fact that, well, number one, it's both sides of the coin, because number one, I'm happy we're getting $117 million, right? On the other side of the coin, it's 4 years after Ida. I mean, this money is related to Ida recovery. You need money a lot faster than 4 years to recover from Ida, right? And you can see it throughout our parish. So the conversation I've been working to have with FEMA and Congress people is, we should have had this money 3 years ago. Because again, if you've gotten this far out and still need assistance from Ida, like that's a whole conversation in itself, right? So again, when you look at what's needed right after a storm passes, to me, that process has got to change. And then you look at to say, every community is going to require some level of assistance. Why don't give us 25%, 50% of the money day one, based on the category size of storm, right? You go back and say, we've had 4 Category 3 storms, and they've averaged $5 billion a storm in damage. Day one of the storm, give us 2.5. Give us 2. Give us 1 billion, and then work on the fact of we gotta earn the rest of it, right? Because the day after the storm, and 2 weeks after the storm, and 6 months after the storm is when we really need it, right? Everybody through here is, I mean, some people are still dealing with their house recovery or rebuilding, right? And they're restoring a bunch of other programs going through that. But To me, if you were in a bind for money after Ida, you're probably either done or out. So this is where you look at it and say, we've done a lot of studies. Look, see that Terrebonne steam engine? That's become a pet project of mine because I want to educate our young people and our young adults with science, technology, engineering, math, and arts. That's what STEAM stands for. It's STEM plus arts. So I want to have an opportunity for our residents. And look, I'm a low to moderate income kid. I grew up in a trailer, 17 years. I don't have a college education. I have a college degree. I had a little bit of education. Don't have a college degree, and I'm self-taught in tech and business, right? Everything that I have is because I worked for it. And so when I look at somebody like me, that I was low to moderate income, and what I can do to provide somebody just like me that went through the same issues and things that I dealt with, right? Because in the downturn in the 80s, we were too poor for food and too rich for food stamps, right? And a lot of people get caught in that. So when I'm looking to help a kid in these programs, I'm looking to help a kid like me because I was there, right? I had one pair of pants to wear that I only had. That's the only pair of pants I owned. And so I relate to this story. I relate to the issues you deal with as a rural community. And that's where I'm coming from when I ran for office, got elected, and how I want to help our community with this right here, because I'm looking for kids just like me, right? And that's what I look at. Like, this is all too late. It's all, yeah. So when you look at 50% of our residents are either on no pay or government pay health care. And again, 40, and I know this number because we were trying to do some projects to affect the entire parish, and you got to be 51% low to moderate income. We're like 43 point something, right? So as a parish, we can't do a parish-wide project because we're not low to moderate income for the entire parish. That's why we have areas that have been identified by DOTD that are considered low to moderate income. And when you look on the website, and we're going to be coming up with a new website that's going to have the status of these projects. When you look at a project, you're going to see the area it serves. And again, we want to make sure those residents are getting the assistance and again, that hand up, the opportunity that we needed 4 years ago, right? We're 4 years later than we should. And myself and Noah traveled the parish. We had our businesses. We were part of a nonprofit. And fortunately, our homes were at a level that once we got some tarps on, whatever, we was able to get to work. We traveled this parish for 6 months, from top to bottom, east to west, trying to figure out the needs and the gaps and things that were missing. We'd go into a community with a trailer full of goods and not only bring supplies, but gather information because cell service was down and figure out what was needed, come back up and go, okay, they need this, they need gas, they need meals, they need this and that. And so that's one of the things that pushed me to really run and do this job, is because I felt our community needed more help, needed a voice, needed all those things. And so I have a lot of passion to not be the next parish president that just came here, spoke, and didn't do anything about it. Because I work around the country. I could live anywhere and work anywhere. I had a choice to make. And I decided to stay here, pull my bootstraps up, and help our community. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I don't want it to be lip service. And that's why I come here. You're going to expect me to see, you're going to see me on a regular basis going, hey, I talked to you about that thing, it's still not fixed yet. Or, hey, we talked about that thing and it's fixed. Because I want to talk about the things we need and come back and answer to make sure we got it done. And that's my commitment to our residents of Terrebonne Parish. With all my heart, and it's God's will and power He allows me every day. So, any other questions? Y'all want to get back to this presentation? Okay. I told y'all I'd answer every question. All right, go to the next slide. Capital outlay, another pot of money. This is money that we actually, it's interesting, we look at capital outlay, we basically pay taxes to go to the state, to go back to the state and beg for the money, right? So these are projects, again, we're trying to get at least the first 3 or 4 on that side because we have partially funded. These are projects that we complete that have already started work. And from there, everything else that we can work on to make sure all kind of different kind of projects. There's never enough money. And now there's even maybe, if there's a deficit in the state, you might as well just scratch this off the board because we're not getting any of it, right? So this is all projects as it relates to capital projects and stuff that's been started that we're trying to make sure we get finished. Any questions on that? Okay, moving on. Housing crisis. I feel like it's something that's very important to talk about. Post-Ida, 800 housing unit shortage, all right, throughout the parish. And I think that's important to talk about. I tell that story to everybody I can that hears Again, when I look at, we're getting money 4 years down the road. And this money, like the way they did Ida is different than how they did Gustav and Ike. Because Gustav and Ike, they had some housing funds that was all part of CDBDR. Well, now for Ida, it's not. And it's Louisiana Housing Corporation. And so they got programs, and let me just finish this if you don't mind. But that's where you look at Parkwood Place, West Tunnel Loft, Imperial Terrace, and Bon Terre. Those projects right there should hopefully bring us around 300 units within the next 18 to 24 months, which is still going to leave us with a 500 unit shortage for housing, right? And this is when you look at Bayou Towers and Senator Circle. That's Housing Authority, and they're trying to work through FEMA and everything else to get funding for that kind of stuff. And then we're working with South Shore Planning, that we have some adjudicated properties that we're working with them. They're going to build some metal erector set housing that's supposed to be a lower cost. That's going to provide for another opportunity to provide housing to our residents, right? Because we have a shortage, and we're 4 years after the storm and still dealing with people in campers, which is unheard of, uncalled for, right? It's strong on so many levels. But now, again, we have a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. It's not an oncoming train, but we're going to knock out some of this, but we're having a constant conversation to really make sure that we address this. And then you look at the $117 million that they're going to use with LA Restore after Francine is going to address a certain piece of that also. And that's nothing with us. It's going to be, you apply for an LA Restore program and the state does the whole project. And that's just something they're going to do to help offset. Because we had 1,700 properties damaged for Francine. 17 people lost everything. It was their version of Ida, right? And that's where that funding is going to go. But again, if you divide it up by the amount of homes that were damaged versus how much funds per home, that 117, which is confusing because it's also 117 million, is it going to be enough? Because there really should be 130, probably even more than that. But all we're getting is 117. Yes, sir.
You mentioned about the housing, because I'm seeing that Bayou Towers on Morgan Street, Morgan Street, and sitting and.
So I was in DC about a month and a half ago to get information from them, because we're being told that you could demo it, but if you demo it, they won't better guarantee you get your full money amount that they're going to obligate to you. So there are a couple of buildings. There's one across from the towers that's a green roof, that's most of the roof is blown off. There are certain buildings in Terrebonne Parish that FEMA's telling us you can't tear that down. And I was like, I sent them a picture from my office. I was like, I can see inside right here. Why can't I tear that down? I mean, it's been there. It's not repairable. It's that whole 50% rule. Again, it's so many square foot. You know how much things cost to build per square foot? It seemed like you'd come up with a number, but they're telling us you can't tear down Bayou Towers. And Bayou Towers is further along the center of the circle. Center of the circle is 125 individual projects that's further behind in the towers. But I'm telling, and this is what a conversation I've had with HUD, with Housing Authority. Do we have an idea of how many? There was 300 residents in that building. Do we know how many are here that need a house, that left, that passed away? And that's what I'm looking for the Housing Authority and saying, like, do we need to build 25? Do we need to build 15? Do we have that money? Can we start on that now? And working with the Housing Authority to kind of get that done. And that's why I talk about that top, I'm continuing to work with them and HUD. And think about this. This is something I had a conversation with HUD on. For Katrina, it took 10 years to bring back public housing. For Harvey and Houston, it was 7. And I was like, are you shooting for 5 with Ida? Like, is that our goal right now? What can we do to get that done now? But again, working with FEMA and getting involved at the FEMA level that says, what are you waiting on? Are you waiting on something from them? Okay, let's make sure they get it. We're waiting on something from you? Well, let me go give my Congress people and whoever else can put pressure to push that further along. So, all right. Next question. Next thing. Economic development. So we talked about a lot of destruction. We've talked about a lot of repair. We're talking about recovery. But I do believe it's important to share some things that are going on. And one of those is an EDA waterline grant on Martin Luther King Westside Boulevard. You'll notice there's an area that's not developed. And the reason why it's not developed is it doesn't have utilities, right? Some of the utilities that people ask for in this room, they don't have there. So we worked with the EDA, that's a federal agency, to get a grant to put in utilities that'll spur some development, which is some buildings, some construction, some jobs, opportunities. We bought a Whitney Bank building downtown, get more foot traffic into it. Downtown took a big hit when the sheriff's office moved to Gray. That many people used to eat and everything like that. So we're trying to get, again, more people working, walking, eating, and all downtown. Because study after study shows that the healthier that downtown area is, the healthier the parish is, healthier the county is, right? And so we want to make sure that heart of our parish, that it be strong. Because if it don't be strong, every study shows that the entire parish dies. And so we're going through blight throughout our parish. We tore down, and I was going to talk about this later, we tore down between us and residents 191 blighted properties in 2024 alone. So hopefully you're seeing that less and less stuff looks bad. But we still got another 400 to 500 to go, right? And they keep adding to the list on a regular basis. And so that's something we're working to make sure, the whole broken window syndrome, right? When people see broken windows, you just think blight, you think poorly, you think negative. To make things just look better and not be an eyesore is something we're pushing to do. Fletcher built a workforce building right here in Schriever. That's them committing to workforce and trying to skill our I'd say young adults, but everybody. You could be whatever age and go to Fletcher, go to Unitech, go to these different programs. Cynthia, Louisiana is a company that's bought some property in Gibson. They're talking about converting water lilies, one of our favorite things around here, right, into potted plant holders, OSB board. Again, that's an opportunity to take a nuisance in our area and turn it to a resource. We have a health unit, which health unit has a negative connotation. We're going to call it's going to basically be like the health unit at the Community Outreach Center. And that's going to be a new health unit on Tunnel Boulevard next to the one that's there now. And bids should be in May and start construction on that. American Legion building we're renovating to make it a veterans center of resources, that if you're a veteran, you go there and different organizations will work out of there and help veterans with needs. So next slide. Permits, I'd just like to talk about this. We were around 3,000 prior to Ida. We got up to almost 8,000. We've settled at just under 6,000 permits a year, which is why permits just take longer. It used to be 2 to 3 days, now to 2 to 3 weeks. We're kind of working that, make it faster and everything, but we just are dealing with almost twice the amount of permits we used to deal with before Ida. Next slide. Insurance reform. How many people in here are dealing with insurance issues? Anybody? Everybody? If insurance is affordable? No problem? Right. Look, my insurance just doubled. My house note went up, and I was like, what's going on here? Like, after all this time, why now, right? So there's a few things we're working on, right? You have a homeowner's issue and you have a flood insurance issue. With the homeowners, the legislature passed 26 bills last year, and it was supposed to lower rates, and it didn't. So now they're going back to the insurance companies. You're hearing all the conversations recently with the governor, tort reform, lower insurance cost. There are things that they're working on. What we're doing as a parish, as we have less impact on homeowners than we do flood, is after Francine, we got our insurance commissioner down here. We went to the levy. We showed them where it held. We showed them how the money that was been invested that we taxed ourselves. The conversation is the $1 billion we spent in our levy system saved FEMA $1.7 billion for Francine alone. And so by us saying that, by us seeing the stuff that didn't get destroyed for Francine, because we had 100-mile-an-hour winds in this area, Francine, for those that may or may not know, that'll do some damage. But things are poles held, roofs held, right? That we get credit for that, and that the reinsurers see all the work that we've done. That we're helping ourselves. We're fixing things ourselves. So that's what we're doing from a homeowner's perspective. From a flood insurance perspective, we're in a lawsuit with FEMA. We're trying to get FEMA to update their maps because they have data since 2018. And risk rating 2.0 is based on proximity to water. But what most people don't realize that's different in our area is that the closer you are to water, the higher you are, right? In most other places, it's lower. And so having conversations with FEMA, working with, I went up to DC for that trip I went up to last time, and having a conversation with FEMA that says they do the data every 10 years. We've done more work in the last 5, 2 to 3 times the amount of work in the last 5 than we did in the previous 10. So FEMA ought to start checking it every 5. And they should use technology. And we got flood models that the state's working on and working to have those conversations to make sure that things that are now in a flood area get pulled out of a flood area, because just because it's close to water doesn't mean it's going to flood, right? And so those are different things that we're working with to try to get both homeowners and flood insurance adjusted and everything in our power to make sure we hold FEMA accountable and get things to change there. Next slide. We're close to the end. So I kind of talked about this a little bit earlier. We had over 500 properties in the condemnation process, right, that have been reported for blight. We tore down 191 in 2024 alone. We had $1 million to tear those homes down. Now, what's good about that is if we don't have that funding, we're going to go tear down a property and we're going to look to bill that homeowner for that tear down. And if they don't pay that, we're going to seize that property. With this $1 million that we have and other funding that we're looking for, we're able to do all that and we don't charge the resident a dime. Now, some people say maybe you shouldn't spend that money, but at the end of the day, it's affecting property values. It affects us all. Blight, crime and everything that's associated with blight. That's why, as a government, we decided this is something that's important and we need to get done. We also did some ordinance updates. If you have a property that has continual issues, or you own a lot of properties with issues, that now stacks and counts against you. As a property owner, I feel like you have a responsibility to keep it safe, to have it not be blighted. So we changed some things with ordinances on how to do that, making the serving time faster where we could turn this stuff around. Because a lot of times we got to find who the owner is, and it's so different. So we sped up that process and we put more accountability. Panhandling and vagrancy was unconstitutional. We passed an anti-camping ordinance that allows us, because right now, if somebody is on a property and the owner doesn't say they're trespassing, there's nothing we could do. So now with the anti-camping ordinance, when you come down to the bottom of the twin spans, we call them banana box condos. There was nothing we could do there until we passed that ordinance. Now we can do something about that and help get it cleaned up. Recreation accountability is something we're still working through. We had passed an ordinance. I know Carl's working on that, but it's really a conversation about getting the recreation districts together and making them all aware about summer programs and making them have master plans that we're not building. This is the line. We built a building here and we built a building there. There's still recreation districts that don't have pools, that don't have some of the other resources that some of the others do. And there's, I know for sure there are a couple senior lunches. We have 11 districts, but we only have a couple senior lunches. Why aren't we doing that throughout more districts? I think to have the recreation accountability gets those recreation districts to work together and help each other out. And that's just something I think it benefits us all. And we passed the Borrow Pit Pond ordinance, which is interesting to me because I didn't think it says bond. It should say pond, by the way. Chief of Staff Leilani, that should say pond instead of bond. I can't get help these days, man. No, I was joking. Yeah, one job now. But we had a situation, and that was so borrow pits is when they dig dirt and build levees. But we run into some other situations where somebody dug a pond and started flooding a neighborhood. And with the previous ordinances, we couldn't do anything. Now, you want to dig a pond, it's got to be so many feet away from a house. If it's related to a neighborhood, there are things that we get involved with to make sure nobody's doing anything to flood other people. And that's where a lot of that comes into play. Next slide. Quality of life. So we had some parks that were in different recreation groups that we were doing a lot of the maintenance. They were unsafe. We had to do some things to make sure that they're maintained to a level that we feel they should be. And at the same time, the west side has the Bike Country Sports Park. The east side didn't have anything. So we took over the air-based softball complex, and our goal is to turn that into a Bike Country Sports Park on the east side, where the residents on the east side have equal activity opportunities. Maybe not the same stuff because they might have different needs, but that we could do something similar on the east side that we're doing on the west side. Next slide. Newly resigned website. Very proud about this. I talked about this when I was running for office. It's a few months behind because we had another project come up, but now you should be able to go to the website on your phone, tpcg.org, easily accessible, easy to find stuff, easy to request assistance. Go check that out. We want your feedback if you can't find something and anything you think does or doesn't work better. Just us having a new website makes it easier for people to find things through like Google. If you're trying to search something, paying bills with council district maps, you can actually see who your council person is. It shows a map of what the area they service. And so we just want to make it easier for our residents to do self-service to different things on our website. So I'd love for you guys to check that out. Very proud about that. Next one. Bayou. So we talked about the Bayou Terrebonne. We talked about vegetation, some of the Hurricane Francine stuff already. The other project, we talked about going to the Parish line. Derelict vessel removal. And it's anywhere between 400 and 900 derelict vessels in our waterways throughout the parish. We're working to get those vessels out of the waterways and also working to make sure that when a new vessel appears today, that we have a process in place on how to handle that. So again, this is when you look at all the things that we're trying to fix and the roads and the lighting, we got a bunch of vessels causing problems in our waterways that are polluting them, that are making it to where you can't navigate them. The waterways are unhealthy. So again, we got a lot of different issues to address, and we're working through that. And the Bayou Revival campaign, that's something that Noah, I got to give him the credit on that. He's a big Bayou guy. He loves to make sure him, like myself, hate litter. Can't stand litter. I hate when people litter. But to make awareness of, let's keep the trash out of our bayous and be conscious of the fact of, we did some stuff after Mardi Gras to make sure less trash gets into the bayou. And if it makes it into the bayou, we put some berms to where if it makes it into Bayou Terrebonne, it don't make it into the intercoastal. And I think we picked up 35 or 30-ish bags of garbage out of the bayou just for Mardi Gras. So those are the things that we're doing to make our waterways healthier and everything else. Next slide. Roads and bridges. So I try to put a few projects on here. We got more things we're looking to add. Like we've talked about, parish-wide, grass, lilies, striping, right? Those are all the things we know that affect the safety of our residents and are very important for us to figure out ways to get that stuff done. Savannah Road Bridge, Main Project Road, Country Estates. These are all projects that DOTD is working on that they say, hey, we're going to do this here. We're going to do that there. And we're also going, hey, don't forget about that place over there. What about this thing over here, right? There are more I want to put up on here. I'm just waiting on some clarification of data. But this is just kind of some of the things that we're working on that DOTD and our Wildlife and Fisheries is working on, with more to come, because there's a ton of work to get done. These are the ones that are closest to getting done, but there's projects all the way into 2026. And again, I'm looking to get this data on here and also shared on our website and social media. And no matter what list it is, it's never going to be long enough or fast enough. And I just want you guys to know we feel you. You feel your pain. And we travel these same roads, and I don't want my family hitting a bolt hole and going into a bayou or anything like that. So it's important about the safety of our residents and families. And I think that's it. We'd love your feedback. If you want to scan that QR code and tell us how cool you think we are, how cool you thought this was. If you don't think we're cool, don't scan that QR code. We'll give you something else to scan later. But no, any more questions? Well, I want to thank y'all for coming out. And again, it may not be all the answers that you want to hear, but at the end of the day, what I think it's important is we give you information, right? We tell you what's going on. We tell you what the things we're dealing with, what we're trying to get done, that we work to align and make sure that the communities, again, have a voice, that we're coming to you and we're working to get information from you, give information to you, and work together. And my slogan's about moving the parish forward, because as far as I'm concerned, I don't care what got us here. We're here now, right? We're here today. I want to work on what we got to do to take care of tomorrow, next month, next year, and move us forward. And I promise you guys, and you can ask any of my team, I'd leave the room and you can ask them. If you don't think I push hard, every day I'm like, let's go, let's go, let's go. Because again, we're years behind, and anything we do is probably not going to be soon enough, but we got to make sure our residents see a difference and know that Calvary's on the way and help is coming. So the goal at a minimum is this time next year for sure, right? Right, because coming back. But again, I've had different communities call me, or if we have something going on with a project in the area, then we're making trips back out. But if you call 873, everybody write this number down, 873-6401. And I'll be like, people give me a hard time that says, that's the best number to get me at the office. That actually rings to my phone and my desk and everything like that. It might not get me right away depending on my availability, but you'll get somebody, right? But it gets right to me. That's the parish president's office right there. So some people give me a hard time that I was going to have an open door policy and that I don't. And right now I'm booking on average between 2 to 3 weeks out. And everybody I've told that has an issue, if you give me your problem, give me your address, give me your phone number, give me a picture, that issue will probably be fixed before we even get a chance to sit down and meet. So if you give me a road and bridge problem, I'm going to turn around to this guy and say, hey, are you familiar with this problem? Do we have a project coming up? All the different things that we're going to go through. You get that number, but that number.
And, all right, so roads, bridges, drainage, public transit, animal control, engineer, what else am I in charge of? That's a little bit. Buildings. Okay, the number is, my name is David Rome. You can call me Dave. My office is at 206 Government Street. I'm here in Gray, all right? So my second home is here in Gray. You can call 873-6735. And when you call that number, it's going to give you a menu. So you could get, if you got a road problem, you hit the button for the road dealer. Talk to the road person. But if you want to talk to me, you hit the number 5, and you're going to get me or my secretary, and I will call y'all back. I mean, that's as simple as it is.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
And that number I gave you, like, look, what we'd hope you do is if you have a drainage problem, you call them. If you have a pollution problem, you call them, right? And look, call us if you want to. I'm going to turn around and go, hey, what's up with this? Call the resident back, right? But I'm the accountability guy, right? If those guys don't do what they're supposed to do, I hold my guy accountable. He holds they accountable. So I ask that you give us a chance to fix your issues. And the one thing I talk about, too, is that if we don't know about it, we can't fix it. So I'll see something on Facebook and somebody posts something, and I'll go in there and be like, hey, did you call our guys and tell them about that, our team and tell them about that? And they go, no. I said, well, I doubt they're on Facebook looking for it. So make sure you call us and let us know, because as soon as we know, that's when that clock starts, that I can hold them accountable for the things that need to get fixed. And look, man, I'll go back to, we don't have enough money to fix everything we got. It's never going to happen as fast as we'd like it to, but we're working every day to make it faster, to do more with the money we have. And hopefully everybody starts to see that, especially like you said, in the vegetation perspective, that things are cut on a more regular basis, that maybe we used to do it 2 or 3 or 1, and now it's 4. And again, we've already gotten some feedback. Some of the stuff we're doing is making a difference, and that's what I hope that you guys get.
I'd like to make sure that a lot of the areas that's been left behind and left out of ongoing, where other areas are being taken care of, we just want to make sure that our areas, which North Terrebonne is one of those areas, we just want to make sure that we also get the attention and that we get taken care of as well. So.
Yes, ma'am. I'm cool. I'm okay with that. And hopefully it's a thank you for doing stuff, right? That's my goal. My goal is to, look, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing, expect a different result, right? Again, I don't want to come here and get yelled at. They don't want to come here and get yelled at. We want to know what's going on, give you updates, but then something new might happen that we're not aware of. And we give you this platform to say, hey, call that number, or Jason's coming in April. We know we could talk to him then, so, and again, at any point you guys need something, call us, but thank y'all for y'all time. Thank y'all for what you do for your community and communities. And again, without you doing what you're doing, it doesn't give us the opportunity to do what we do. And we thank y'all very much. Appreciate it. And y'all have a good night.
This segment was brought to you by Trapp Chevrolet. We're always on your side.